What's up, Matt from Urchfab. In this video we're doing some stitch welding or seam welding, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so stitch welding or seam welding is something that's done to basically just stiffen up the chassis of your car. The whole body and chassis of a car is just a load of pressed panels which are spot welded together, and that's what forms your whole car. So by stitch welding it or seam welding it, you're just adding extra reinforcement to the original spot welds which are there, which are just going to take some of the flex out of the chassis, stop it twisting and flexing so much. Or if it's just specific areas of the car that you're looking to reinforce, like where the suspension bolts in or anywhere where there needs to be strong, then you can concentrate specifically on those areas around chassis legs or suspension points, any stuff like that. It's raining for the first time in about 2 months. And we're in England. Right, I'm going to show you on this some nice clean scrap so that I don't have to basically go through the misery that you're going to have to go to. But this is just what you're going to have. You're going to have your two panels that are going to be spot welded together, and all you're doing is just adding extra reinforcement to these spot welds. So you're going to basically, mark out at whatever distance you want to do your stitch welds. I'll show you what I do. The problem is that when they put these cars together, so when they manufacture the cars, somehow they manage to get the sealer right in behind the join, so that if you just come along and just strip a bit of it off and then go to weld it, and you've got any sealer or paint or scum in that joint, it will just blow the weld out, and you're going to have a real nightmare trying to actually get any decent welds onto this seam. So I'll just show you what I do to, the best way I've found of getting it all off and preparing it for welding. Alright, so for getting the initial bit, the bulk of the sealer off, I'd just buy yourself some cheap chisels that you can keep sharpening with a grinder or whatever. It works well for getting it off. You can use a bit of heat, but I would get as much off without using any heat as possible first, because you're just going to smoke yourself out. I'd heat up the chisel rather than actually heating up the sealer itself. You don't really want to be burning that and breathing it all in. Once you've got the majority of it off, I use these on a grinder and just whiz all the way along the seam. That'll literally just chew through it all. And then getting into the little tight corners, I use a little one of these on a drill. And then if you've got any bits of paint or anything like that, you could also use these. These will strip the paint off without actually taking any of the metal away. What you don't want to do is grind along it with any sort of like flap disc or anything like that, or grinding disc, because you don't want to take any of the thickness of this material away. Otherwise, when you come to weld it, you're going to be even more likely to blow holes through it. Once you've done that, got as much of it off as possible, still going to have like crap in between these joints. So I'll actually chisel these open. Chisel the joints open so you can get in behind, and then you'll be able to get your drill right in behind. in there and get a little tiny screwdriver or little hook. Just hook it all out, scrape the joint as clean as possible. Once you've got all the sealer out, everything out, then you need to go along and you need to make sure every joint is completely tight, like pressed tight. Because if you've got any sort of gap when you go to weld it, you're going to be more likely to blow a hole. So if you can get to the back side of the seam, then you can get a dolly on the back. You know, dolly, hammer and dolly it so it's all completely flat. So when it comes to how far you want to space your welds, me personally, I prefer to do a shorter weld and quite a short gap in between each one. So, you know, if I'm doing a whole car, I wouldn't bother measuring. I would literally just do it by eye, and I'm probably going to be looking at, so if it was somewhere on the car that it was always going to be looked at and I wanted it to look perfect, I'd probably do a mark like every 60. And then at the start of each of those marks, probably do a weld about 15 mil long. I might space it a little bit more than that actually. Maybe 70, we'll do it at that. So when it comes to the welding, I think for me, I'll spend a bit of time finding some good settings to where I can actually run a continuous weld. And the reason for that is it's just better and it's faster. I'm set at 18 volts. 6 meters a minute there, which is pretty hot for sheet metal. So the idea is basically just like hot and fast, instead of like firing it up and hanging around and letting it sort of weld in like you would normally on thicker stuff. We're going a bit hotter on the machine, but really fast travel speed, and that's just going to stop you burning through. I'm just spacing that off so that you can see that it's not, the reason it's not burning through isn't because it's laid flat on a table, because that would stop me from burning through. So, you know, this is going to burn through just as easy. It's going to burn through on what you're doing. This is 1 millimeter sheet metal and set at 18 volts, 6 meters a minute. You know, I'm not saying that'll work on your machine, because I've got 3 machines here and they all require different voltage to wire feed, like ratios. So that might be a bit hot for this anyway, but we'll give it a go. Alright, so there we go. Stitch welded. You could turn that machine down a little bit and still get away with it, but you need it hot enough so that you can do a real fast travel speed. That's the key to it, really. And yeah, that last one I just did like a load of like a pulse technique where you just do tack, 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 just to show you how much longer that takes than that. With this, the majority of the work is just cleaning it, getting all the crap out. You're not gonna have it as easy as this if you are trying to clean all the seams out yourself. If I'm building custom floor pans, or building sections of a car, I'm making panels and fitting panels in, this is how I'll connect them, rather than drilling holes and plug welding it. So this car behind, I've basically made all the floors, everything, and I'll show you how that, I've basically joined all the floors up like this. So all these panels are just stitched in. You can see all the stitches all the way around. Basically anything that's not seam welded, as in like a continuous weld, it is stitched. That's it for this one. Cheers for watching. See ya.